Hi guys, I wanted to start a booktube since I was little basically. I mean in general I've wanted to start a YouTube forever, but especially one where I can just talk about the thing I love the most, which is books. And it's been something where in recent years I've really started to be like, okay, like now's the time, and then I'll just like push it aside because it's not something that comes, you know, naturally to me. I'm not someone that's super confident in front of a camera or talking, but I kind of decided that this is a year I'm gonna just try, and you know, worst comes to worst, I suck at it, and then at least I know that it wasn't for me, you know? So this is my first video, and if you read the title, you know it's going to be me talking about the fact that we are in April and I have reached my yearly reading goal already. So just to preface this, my reading goal was set at 100. I set it the same as last year's reading goal just because I am starting law school this upcoming fall, and I just didn't want, I never know how much or how little I'm going to read. It's definitely circumstantial because, for example, you know, in college when I was super busy, I wasn't able to read as much as I am now when I have a little bit of a break. So the first book that I really liked is by a YouTuber, ironically, that I have followed on here forever, and that's Mallory Irvin. You probably, I don't know if you probably know her, but you might know her. But she recently came out with a book called Living Fully. I was lucky enough to get this book as an ARC, so I read it before it was published, and I just really liked it. In general, I kind of have a hard time connecting with self-help books just because I just, like, I can appreciate them, but I also feel like a lot of the things that are in them are either super obvious or they kind of go over my head, to be honest. I'm just like, okay, like, I get it, that's nice, but like, tell me something I don't know, you know? But this is a book that falls kind of within that. It's kind of, I want to say it's like in between self-help and spirituality, but what it really kind of felt like to me is someone just talking about their life experiences and what they learned from that, and just sharing, you know, what they've learned and their knowledge with their readers. And like, it was one of the first times that I've read a book in this genre where I didn't think that it was like annoying or like performative. Like, it felt very genuine and authentic to me. The next book that I really liked was Weather Girl by Rachel and Solomon. This book deals with a lot of mental health in a way where it doesn't, you know, glorify everything or make it seem like it's something that is always easy. I find myself struggling with a lot of books that have this sort of mental health. It's quirky, it's, you know, because a lot of times that's not the case for a lot of people. And I liked the fact that the main character in this book, well, I didn't like the fact that she struggled, but I appreciated the fact that the author showed the like other side to mental health and how it does have like a debilitating effect on people, and how it can affect, like, it has a trickle over effect into a lot of people's lives and their ability to have relationships with themselves, and then also, you know, relationships with other people, whether that be workplace relationships and like a professional level or even romantic relationships. So I really liked it. I know a couple people on Bookstagram that I didn't really click with, but I just think that I read it at the right time and I was able to appreciate, you know, I thought it was really cute, and then it also had a lot of substance. So there's two books in this, it's a duology, but the first two books that I was a little bit let down by is the duology by Cass Morgan. I think a lot of the reason why I struggled with this duology is because of the fact that these books are set in a college setting and it felt very young. And I'm not saying, you know, it needed to be super mature, but I just felt like, especially being someone that's not like fresh out of college, but you know, I graduated a couple years ago, and it just didn't really feel, I don't want to say authentic because this is a book about witches, but it just felt young to me. And I also feel like I had a hard time kind of connecting with the characters, and I also had a hard time connecting into this, like, the story as a whole. It's like I had a hard time, like, feeling like I was, like, in the story or, like, hooked. And it took until probably the last 50 to 100 pages for me to even feel excited about it. I will say that the second book picked up a lot quicker. It was a lot faster, like, in pace, and then the characters were more developed, so it was easy just to pick up where it left off. But I will say, in general, it wasn't my favorite. I will say, however, the covers are beautiful, so there's a plus. A book that I personally loved, and it is also another duology, but the second book has not been released yet, is Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I do have friends that it didn't work as well as it did for me, but I think that, you know, that's just how most reading goes. Like, what I'm reading off my list that I didn't like, I don't want it to discourage you from, like, picking up and reading, because genuinely there's so many books that I've loved that friends haven't, or friends have loved that I haven't, and, you know, so just, like, take what I'm saying as a grain of salt. So Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan. I'm sorry if I butcher any names, but this is a book where, so I'm a big fantasy reader, and I'm especially a big, like, fantasy romance kind of together reader. This is a book that I think is just beautiful. The way that it's written is it's just so transformative. I think that the characterization's beautiful. I think the storytelling, the world building, everything about this book I just love. I will say that I don't know if I'm rooting for the wrong people in this series, but I'm excited to see how it, you know, continues. A book that I really liked was Made in Manhattan by Lauren Lane. I thought that this book was so cute. It was just a really fun, entertaining book. On my Bookstagram, I said that it reminded me a little bit of Heart of Dixie, the show, and in my review I said that the main guy especially reminded me of Wayne, and the author is like, I'm so glad you said that, I love him. So yeah, but the story is just super cute. It's kind of Grumpy and Sunshine trope, if you will. It has steam, so if you don't like that, you probably won't like it. But overall, it's just, like, fun, and I thought it was really cute. The Shadows Between Us, if you're on Book Talk, you've probably seen I'll just read it. The opening line, it's, they've never found the body of the first and only boy who broke my heart, and they never will. When I saw that, I was like, say less. I was surprised how much I love this book. I thought that from start to finish, it was just an amazing enemies to lovers book. I thought that the main character is just really cool. I'm super into, like, the more murderous, stabby protagonist type of females. So, especially in fantasy books, like, I appreciated her. I love Nesta. I love Poppy from Blood and Ash. So, like, I just love characters like this. So if you're also into, like, characters that are sort of within that snarky, more violent tendencies, I think you also would really like this book. Another book that I really liked is Electric Idol by Katie Robert. Full transparency, I didn't love Neon Gods. I have a lot of friends that did, but I just didn't. So, and I think this honestly has a lot to do with, I have read Lore Olympus and also A Touch of Darkness, so I have these, like, versions of Hades that I really already love a lot, and so this Hades just didn't really work for me. But with that being said, these characters I loved. I thought the representation, the characterization, the world building, even Hades and Persephone in this, like, as background characters and not at the forefront, also really just, I loved it. I was given the audio book arc of it, so I was able to experience the narrators, and honestly, I just think that that might have also been a reason why I really loved it. I think that they did an amazing job kind of bringing these characters to life in a way that just, just worked for me. Alright, so the next book that I'm going to talk about is one that I didn't really love, and I'm probably going to get a little bit of slack for it, but I want to preface this by saying it's not one of those situations where I am picking on this author because they're popular or because I want to be like that cool person that's, you know, different, because that's not the case at all. Honestly, I love this author and a lot of their books did work for me. I just think that the topic and the subject matter in this book was just a lot for me, and I think that's partly due to the time in my life where it's just like I was experiencing loss, so like reading about loss wasn't super fun, but it also has a lot to do with the fact that I am a very like empathetic person to almost a fault, where a lot of emotions I just really feel and it almost makes me uncomfortable even if it's a made-up situation. That being said, the book is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I struggled with probably the first 60 to 75% of this book, and I will say that towards the end there were, well, throughout the whole book, I think Colleen Hoover does a really amazing job of just having like just a quotable book as like in their entirety, but towards the end especially I thought that she had some very beautiful quotes like on the subject of loss and grief. So I will say that there were parts that I loved, but I was not one of those people that loved it as a whole, unfortunately. Okay. This next author I'm going to be doing another video for because, oh my gosh. So last year I read The Wall of Winnipeg and Me, and then I just randomly stopped reading her books. Not like by choice, but I just got busy. And if you don't know who that's by, it's by Mariana Zapata. And then in, I think like January, late January, early February, I was just like, I'm just gonna like pick up another book. So I started reading Luna and the Lie. I read that in a day, which, if you know her books, they're very long, slow burn books, and most of her books are at least 400 pages. And when I tell you I've read almost all of her books either, you know, in a day or in like 2 days, it's slightly impressive but a little bit more concerning. Anyways, Luna and the Lie, I love this book. If I were to tell you my top favorite books by her, I'd probably say Under Lock, love it. Luna and the Lie, love, and then All Roads Lead Here, I'm pretty sure is other, love it. And so Luna and the Lie I'll talk about more in another video, but absolutely loved. And then another author that I really love, and I'm also doing a whole checklist of their books, is Penelope Douglas. They just are the angsty authors of my dreams, and I read Misconduct in a sitting. So I will warn you though, if you're not into like darker kind of smuttier books, not for you. But you know, if that's your type, or if it's a kind of genre you're looking into kind of trying, I think that this is, you know, I enjoyed it. So it's like Under Lock, like I said, I'm going to have an entire video, but this is one of my all-time favorite books ever. So yes. And then a book that I loved, The Simple Wild by Kay Tucker. You've probably seen this book everywhere, but I genuinely thought that it was a really sweet book. Not gonna lie, it took a little while to like kind of get into the book because I just this was also with Hook, Line, and Sinker. They're very similar, but especially the main girls are very similar, and they have this like very over-the-top personality, and sometimes I'm just like, okay, like I get it, but like, you know, I'm waiting to be hooked. So it took a little while for me to like get into the story, but when I did, I just think that the author did a really good job of kind of like having a balance of light and dark, because there is a topic of love and loss and like all this stuff in the book. So yeah, it's not all romance and like steam. I would honestly argue that it's definitely a balance of both. I will say that her father in this book gave me a little bit of Charlie vibes from Twilight, so it was a little bit of a, you know, he felt familiar to me. Another book that I was sort of let down by is The Southerner Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. If you check out my Bookstagram, you'll probably see my review, and it's very confusing, and I even had a lot of friends that were like, I don't know how you felt about this book, because you're very, you know, wishy-washy, and honestly, I don't really still know how I feel about it. It's definitely in the horror realm, so I get that it's supposed to be gross and like kind of hard to read at times. I found myself kind of pushing through the books. I was doing a buddy read with one of my best friends on Bookstagram. Dan, you probably won't watch this because it's probably too long for you. But we were texting back and forth, and this is the most gross way to, I guess, talk about a book. But I told him that it felt like you had a scab on your body and you were picking at it, and then you felt like this slight satisfaction of like getting the scab off, but then instantly you were grossed out, you know, by, you know, and so I just had a really hard time with this book. It was disgusting. It was very descriptive and disgusting, and yeah, but I get that like that was the point though, so again, that's a me thing, not the book thing. I just had a really hard time with this book. It was disgusting, but I get that like that was the point though, so again, that's a me thing, not the book thing. Another book that I really loved is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. I'm not too sure how to pronounce it, but it's just cool because I've been reading these comics forever, the digital version on, I think it's Webtoons, and this is just the physical form of them, so it's just cool to see something that you've been following along digitally, you know, in your hands. So I'm also very excited for the other volumes to come out just because I just personally love them. Okay. And that's why I was like talking about earlier with Neon Gods, like I've been genuinely following this version of Hades forever, so it's like other Hades, it has to be like super special, I guess, for me to like really be like yes. Another book that I loved is It Happened One Summer. This is a book that I see everywhere. I know a lot of people love it. It reminds me a lot of The Simple Wild, but instead of small planes, it's boats. It is definitely on the steamy side, so if you aren't into that, you probably will think that this book is too much. However, I thought it was a fun read. Okay, so another book that I didn't really care for was actually the second book in the series. So I really loved one, and on the other hand, didn't really like this one. I think it's because Hannah and Fox in the first book I just thought were like super witty, funny. They just had so much potential, and then in this book I feel like it was kind of like hidden behind unresolved issues. And I'm not going to get into like all the details just because it would spoil a lot, but I will say that I think that Fox as a character, while his like own personal journey was important, it did feel like for me personally it took away from their character love story as a whole. Like I do wish that a lot of his issues had been resolved a little bit earlier. Like I get that it was like supposed to be like for the suspense and like the slow burn of it, but I do feel like I wanted to see more of Hannah and I wanted to see more of Fox, and like I wanted to see especially more of their relationship on the happy terms, because by the time it was towards the end I was just like, I mean, my heart goes out to you, but also like it got to be slightly redundant. A book that I also really enjoyed is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I think that's how you pronounce it. I also read this with Caitlin and then our other friend Avery. I was genuinely surprised how much I loved it. I thought that all the characters were complex, the dynamics together were like really interesting. I genuinely was like, where is this going? And for a YA book, I thought that, I was a little scared that I was going to read too young for me, and I didn't feel like that at all. as I do this, I have seen a couple of banned books that I've read, and it reminds me that I'm probably going to eventually do a banned book video where I just talk about all the books that I've read that are banned or like not found on Amazon and my thoughts on them. They're on the more taboo side, so I'm definitely going to have that in its own video, so if you're not into that, you can just like skip the whole video. Another series that I didn't love was Grand Lies and Grand Love, The Promise Duet. I just feel like it was hard to root for this like love story because it was so toxic. And don't get me wrong, I read dark romance. I'm able to separate fantasy from fiction, but they just weren't very likable, and then towards the end I was just sort of annoyed. Oh my god. And Stay With Me by Nicole Fiorina, I think is how you pronounce her last name. I read this book, I think probably like a week or two ago, and she is just a beautiful writer. Like, I kid you not, I discovered her and I was just like, oh well, this sounds interesting. Like, you just need to read this book. I just think it's so pretty, it's so well done, and just like overall I thought that it was just, I'm gonna read the second one. There's I think 3 out in the series, and I'm gonna read the whole thing. Right now I'm reading her other book, Hollow Heathens, and I also really love it, so I think I just genuinely love her writing style. But I do have a more in-depth review on my Bookstagram if you want to read all my thoughts. For Stay With Me especially, I kind of went into like full detail. This book I'm going to talk about, because it's forever long, is Poison for Breakfast by Lemony Snicket. This is a book that I kind of thought at times was a little bit pretentious, snarky. It's a little bit insulting. Like, I think it's just like the humor and the way it's set up. But there are so many parts in it that feel so philosophical and like profound and just really make you think like, you know? So I thought the humor was, interesting. At times it was a little bit like, okay, this is a little bit redundant, like we get it. But I also recognized that that was kind of intentional, like there was a purpose behind it. So I thought it was very interesting. But I basically just plan to, after I get the hang of filming and editing, and mind you, like this is a learning curve, so the first video or couple videos probably aren't going to be the best, but I kind of plan to talk about all things bookish, maybe a little bit of life, but mostly just bookish. But yeah, if you liked this video, please like and subscribe, and if you want to talk about books on here, feel free to comment. I love talking about anything. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, I don't really care, as long as you're not super aggressive about it. That's all I care about. And if you want to follow my Bookstagram, I would love it. It's at Read and Ramble. You'll be able to see what I'm reading, what I'm thinking, and all that stuff. So yes, that's all for today. I hope you liked it, and I'm very interested to see how many books I end up reading towards the end, because my sister did the math and she's like, you've almost read as many books as days have gone by in the year. And I'm like, that is interesting, but also I need to go do something not reading to experience real life too. But yeah, so okay, talk to you later.